To Calvary, welcome to She Ministries. And I didn't get to see, how many of you are new? Mwah, 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 mwah. Thank you very much for coming. And we're starting a study, and I'm going to just kick it off today and say, be brave. So we're going to be brave this morning, and I want to tell you a story. Be brave. This is on your charms. This is from Joshua. Only be strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all of the law which Moses, my servant, commanded you. We need to be brave to obey. And I want to tell you about somebody. Her name is Kayla Mueller. I don't know if you saw 2020 a couple weeks ago, but she's my hero. Kayla Mueller was 24 years old, a good girl, a sweet girl, a Christian. And she felt called to go help the refugees, the Syrian refugees in Turkey. And she loved to play with them, to feed them, to hold them, to hang with them. And while she was there, she made many friends. And one of her friends asked if she would go to Aleppo, Syria, to help install a satellite internet program for Doctors Without Borders. And she bravely went and took the journey on a non-permissive environment. And she was successful. She got the satellite up and running. And she was in the car with a few of the other Doctor Without Border volunteers, and it was stopped and she was kidnapped. We now know that Kayla spent over 18 months in a 12 by 12 cell with a light bulb. She was given verbal abuse. She was given sensory deprivation, isolation, forced labor, and sexual assault. During the 18 months she was there, her parents would verify that she had all of her toenails and fingernails ripped off while in captivity. They negotiated Doctors Without Borders for 3 of the women who had been captive with her, but they would not negotiate for Kayla. So when the 3 went home, they left Kayla, and they called her the girl left behind. But I'll tell you one thing, she never left her faith behind. It is said that she was paraded in front of the male captives, putting on a scarf, a hijab, and that they would say, see her, she's so much braver than you. She's so much smarter than you. She's converted to Islam. And she interrupted her captors and said, no, I didn't. It is believed that Jihadi John, that English guy that was hacking off heads, was one of her captors. And Daniel, a Danish guy, was one of the people that she was paraded in front of, and he said, I never would have said that in front of those people. In fact, he tried to commit suicide when they had his hands chained up. It didn't work. One of the people, as she was moved from place to place, she was moved to al-Baghdadi, the leader of ISIS himself, the leader of the caliphate, to his home. And there were many Yazidi refugees as well. The Yazidis are the ones that the genocide has been happening, and we've been building playgrounds for them. 3 young girls were with her, a 13-year-old named Julia that she tried to comfort and care for. And it said many times al-Baghdadi himself asked for Kayla at night. Julia and 3 of the Yazidis made a plan that they were going to escape. And they begged Julia to come with them. We're going to go at night, we have a way. And she refused because she said, if an American goes with you, they'll never stop tracking us. They'll never stop looking for me. You'll never make the escape. Wow. Talk about a girl who climbed that mountain with her eyes wide open. And she did it with Jesus. We're studying Joshua, and we find out that Joshua was a slave. That one of the things that Joshua endured was slavery. Okay, he was a slave. The only thing we know about him in Egypt is that he was from the tribe of Ephraim, and that he was a descendant of Joseph. His father was a slave. His grandfather was a slave. His great-grandfather was a slave. All he'd known in all the generations preceding him was slavery. Now I wonder if you're a slave boy raised in Egypt, if you dream like the Egyptian soldiers of becoming a general, if you dream of world travel, if you dream of education, if you dream of anything, I wonder, was his back scarred like black slaves from the South? Did he keep his head down and not look into the eyes of his abusers like a battered woman? Did he dream at all? Did he think about perpetrating revenge upon those who held them? We don't know. At this point in history, there were more Jews, Hebrews, than there were Egyptians in the land. Why no revolution? Why no revolt? And I would say to you that cowardice is almost as contagious as courage. Cowardice can be contagious. As a matter of fact, Dwight D. Eisenhower said that optimism and pessimism are infectious and they spread more rapidly from the head down than any other way. You need courageous leaders to have courageous people. And at this time, there were no courageous leaders among the Jews. Have you ever heard of something called the caged animal syndrome? The caged animal syndrome is really sad. I hate to tell you, I've been to the zoo with my grandkids, and we have a polar bear there. Have you guys ever gone there? And all he ever does is walk back and forth and licks weird in the air. One day Seth looked at me and he goes, "I feel sorry for that dude." I was like, I kind of do too. Well, in Philadelphia, there were caged bears, and they decided to expand the habitat and put in a bubbling brook and some rocks and make it much more adventurous and wonderful. And the young bears adapted quickly, and they strutted their stuff all over that exhibit. But one old guy, back in the corner, head down, eyes to the ground, would walk 10 paces in one direction, shudder, turn around and walk 10 paces back to where he began. And that's what he did all day. Caged animal syndrome includes behaviors like pacing, rocking, swimming in circles, excessive sleep, self-mutilation, excessive grooming. I wonder if any of you are at a phase of caged animal syndrome, kind of a place of self-helplessness, that you do the same thing over and over again expecting a different result. The same program, the same food, the same whatever, and you think somehow that same thing is going to bring comfort or set you free, and I got to tell you, it will not. You could take the cage away, but you may still pace back and forth. You know what they needed? A liberator. And Moses came on the scene and he said, "Let my people go." Wow, those words just resonate, don't they? And at last, the people believed it. He made a stance against the oppressors. He encouraged those who were in slavery. And so at last, maybe the children of Israel will no longer be slaves. And I've learned something. To change how you feel, you need to change how you behave. That bear needed to expand his borders, and these children of Israel needed to be set free. And to be set free, I'm telling you, ladies, to change your behavior, change how you behave. Be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. That's right. It's time to be doers. It's time to climb mountains. It's time to enter the promised land. It's time to slay giants. It's time to enjoy some milk and honey. It's time, ladies, to rise up. Changed behavior. At last, the children of Israel were obeying God's word. They were going to go make sacrifices. They celebrated Passover, and bravely, Joshua and a million of other Jews made a step out of bondage and a step toward the promised land. Just a step, maybe a baby step. Now, I got to tell you, when you make this step forward, hell will not applaud. As a matter of fact, you might find out that you'll find enemies along this journey. And I know that I did. 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with cancer. I had a tumor about the size of a grapefruit in my abdomen. A week earlier, I was jogging a 10-minute mile. The next week, I could barely get out of bed. And when I came to, I was told it was stage 2, maybe 3, and I would need chemo and I would be bald. And so I had to learn to do something I'd never done before, and that is to face my fear. And I don't know where you are, and I don't know what you're suffering, but I'll tell you, you got to look fear in the face. And I found out from a really good friend that cancer is the little c and Christ is the big C. That's when I came awake from the surgery, Skip's hands laying on me, praying for me. You have to face your enemies. And when you face your fear, you're going to find out 3 things. You'll find out how far you can go. You'll find out you'll be less fearful in the future. And you will increase your confidence if you're going to take that fear and look it in the eye. Well, Joshua wasn't just a slave, he also became a soldier, because when you have to look the enemy in the eye, you got to fight it, right? You got to fight those fears, and he had to fight his enemies. And so as they're marching out, they come across the Amalekites, and Moses says, hey, you go fight, and I'll hold my hands up in prayer. And that combination worked with Moses and his hands in the air and Joshua on the battlefield, victory over their enemies. It was an amazing thing. Now, at this point, Israel had no trained army. They were slaves. They didn't have weapons. They had shovels. Well, they did pillage the Egyptians as they left, so they probably got some swords, but I'm pretty sure they were never trained on how to use them. So as we said, this victory wasn't their sword. This victory was God. And Moses standing on the mountain, and they're trying to do things they'd never done before. Maybe you should try something you've never done before. Maybe that will bring victory. And I'll tell you one thing I've learned. Did you see I bought a zoo? It's the 20-second principle. All you need is 20 seconds of insane courage, and I promise something great will come of it. Whatever it is you fear, 20 seconds of insane courage. Just make that phone call. Do that thing, volunteer, speak out. 20 seconds of insane courage. So Joshua was a slave, a soldier, and he became a spy. After this, Moses noticed him. And he was sending 12 people into the promised land to spy it out, right? And they got to go, and they come back, and guess what? All 12 of them had a unanimous report. They said it was a really good land, flowing with milk and honey, and they brought back those grapes. But 10 of them said, I don't think we should do this. There are giants in the land, and we cannot defeat them. Only Joshua and Caleb said, go for it. I mean, if God can part the Red Sea, if he can rain down manna, he could do anything, and we have his promises, so let's do this. Did they do it? You know what? It says they almost stoned Joshua and Caleb. I'm going to tell you, when you use your 20 seconds of insane courage, people might think you're crazy. But it doesn't mean you are. You might just have something going there. So he was a spy. And what I learned from that is that you can do something about your thoughts of negativity. And this is what Joshua did. He replaced a bad thought with a better thought. It was a bad thought that those were giants. It was a bad thought that they couldn't do it. It was a bad thought that God would not be with them. The better thought is God can do anything. Nothing is impossible for him. Okay, I got to throw a Beatle reference in here. Take a sad song and make it better. Right? Take your sad song, girl, and make it better. Make it better. The entire generation passed away. Joshua marches for 40 years in the wilderness, not for his sin, for someone else's, and every single one of his contemporary dies. He goes to burial after burial, even dignitaries like Aaron and Miriam. Imagine what that felt like. But he still had the promises of God tucked aside, tucked within him. And he gets a promotion. You know what his promotion is from slave to servant? He becomes the servant of Moses. Moses is called the man of God, and Joshua is called the servant of Moses. And I think that's pretty cool. Because guess what? As the servant of Moses, he got to go up Mount Sinai during the 10 Commandments and witness the whole thing. You know what? The way up is the way down. The way up is the way down. He got to do that while he was there. He missed out on the golden calf, so he didn't sin with the others. When the Shekinah glory of God would come on Moses' tent, which they called the tent of meeting, it says that he was there and witnessed it and would linger long after Moses left. He is a servant. You know what I learned from this? Positive company increases your courage factor. Ladies, tuck in. That's why you're here. You need positive company. You need the fellowship of the saints. You need your small work group. You need to be in the Word. You need other people in the army standing beside you, helping you uphold the shield of faith. So I'm going to end this with 3 challenges, 3 steps for you. Number 1, name your obstacle. It was cancer. Something else now. You all got them. Name your obstacle. Number 2, reframe your situation. Take a bad thought and make it better. And then I'm going to encourage you to do something. Do it scared. Because scared's nothing. You can do anything scared. You can ride that merry-go-round. You can go on that loop-de-loop. You can get up and say something. You can say never again and do it scared, because no one can tell the difference. We don't know if that's what's going on in your life. In Live Fearlessly, we join Joshua, who is now the successor, another promotion, and he is on the precipice of the Jordan, just waiting to finally walk into the promised land. Just this close. My question for you is, do you want to go with him? Do you want to cross your barriers? Do you want to get over the past? Do you want freedom from slavery? Do you want to get out of the wilderness wanderings? Yes. And this is your chance to go with Joshua. One last thought. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day that says, try again tomorrow. Because Joshua lasted 40 years before he went into the promised land.